Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm Ted Odorico, and right alongside is LPGA Professional Legends Tour player Cindy Miller. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Ted.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, we are the hosts of the Women of Golf Show. I always keep forgetting that part, but I'll get it straight one of these days. I think it's my old age. I just had a birthday a few weeks ago, and I think it's I got a little bit of that old-timers coming on here. But anyways, glad you could join us this morning. As always, Cindy, let me just ramble off here for a moment or two and let the folks remind them where they can tune into the show. Go to blogtalkradio.com and type in Women of Golf up in the search key, and that will take you to the main page. And, of course, we're live 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and if you look at the screen on that page, front and center, you'll see the today's program. But for some reason, if you can't join us during the live broadcast, not to worry. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf, or again, just type Women of Golf in the search key and scroll down to the on-demand section. And that's where all of the previously aired shows can be listened to in their entirety when it's convenient for you. Also available at iTunes.com as a podcast. You can go into the podcast section, again, type Women of Golf, and that will take you there as well, and you can listen to that. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out during the live broadcast. If you have some questions or comments about the show, you can do so by calling area code 347-945-5855, or you can email Cindy or I when it's convenient for you. My email is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com, and Cindy's is cindy@cindymillergolf.com. And if you're somebody in the golf industry, whether you're a player, a coach, a teacher professional, or maybe an entrepreneur that has maybe you've written a great golf book, or you've got a great product that helps some of those struggling golfers out there improve their game, we would love to hear from you. So you can reach out to cindy@cindymillergolf.com, and we'll see if we can work you into the upcoming month's schedule. Cindy, you've got a great show this morning. We're going to start off with a few questions here to not only for our own benefits, but maybe help some of the golfers out there. And then a little bit later on in the show, in the second half, we're going to be joined by Christina Ricci. She's an LPGA Class A teacher professional, and she's also TPI Golf Level 3 certified and a best-selling golf author, written some great books. I know you've had the pleasure of meeting her on occasion, and I've spoken to her a couple of times over the years, but never actually had her on the show, so we're looking forward to having her on the second half. Cindy, I wanted to start off just with a couple of questions here, and again, I think this is something that those folks that are listening out there can take some value away from as well. They're not really, what I say, tips, but just things that we can do as instructors to maybe help make things a little bit easier. And the first one is maybe you can explain a little bit, and then I'll add my 2 cents in as well, is some of the value that a player can get, and we're talking about amateurs here, from on-course instruction versus being out on the range or the tee. Obviously, both have benefits, but what are some of the on-course instruction values over just working with the students on the range?
I think learning how to think is huge. How to plan a shot, prepare, and then, produce a shot. I think on-course instruction is great when you know how to hit the golf ball. If
right.
you don't know how to hit the golf ball and you can't hit the ball where we want you to hit it, then we got to go back to the range. But if you know what you're doing and you can hit the ball reasonably well, I think having a course management lesson on the physical course would really, really help you. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
If you can't really hit it, then you're going to get frustrated because I'm going to say, okay, let's hit your 3-wood over here. Well, if you can't do it, now we got to worry about what you're doing when you're swinging.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I think I agree 100% with everything you said, but I also think, too, you're first and foremost, if you can't make a decent contact with the golf ball and be able to place it relatively in the general area we'd like you to, then obviously you need to spend more time on the practice tee with further instruction there. But I agree with you. I think golf is a thinking game more so than a physical game. And I think that you have to understand how to prepare yourself mentally for the shot that comes at hand. And also you need to experience some real-time, often, Cindy, I'm sure we've both said this to our students, when they're on the practice tee, to sort of visualize the shot they want to make. And it's very difficult sometimes on some of the practice tees. We can do it because we've been doing it a long time, but some of those newer students, they get on the practice tee and they see a bunch of flags out there, maybe some greens, and depending on where their facility is, or sometimes it's just a flat surface and there's not really a lot of too many targets other than maybe a 150 and a 200 and so on and so forth sign out there. So it's hard for them to visualize what a hole might look like. So I think the on-course play or instruction, if they're ready for that stage, can be extremely valuable, because one of the things that you can do, it's not just a matter of getting on the tee box and navigating around the hole. You can also place some balls, strategically in areas that may pose difficulty for the student, not impossible, but difficulty to present real-time challenges that they're going to be faced with in a normal round. So I think it helps them prepare mentally first and foremost, but also physically, as they're deciding, okay, how do I handle this shot? What do I need to do? And then actually having to, maybe it's a fairway bunker, stepping into that fairway bunker and executing that shot that they've sort of mentally prepared themselves for. And I think that information, and I'm sure you would agree, is extremely valuable, correct?
Absolutely. On-course challenges. So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is don't just go play golf and keep score, but try different shots. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. What I do with I'll tell you exactly what I do with my students. Maybe I'm a little bit of a sadist, a little sadistic mind here or something, but I don't believe in just going around and playing, 3 or 6 or 9 holes with them, and just sort of keeping score, because they're not really learning anything. All they're doing is they're getting a short round of golf in. I want them to get in there, and I want them to experience any given hole. For instance, if there's a par 3 and it's surrounded by bunkers, I don't want them just to, even if they can do it, I don't want them just to hit to the green. So I'll let them have that shot, and we'll get on there and make the putts and that. But I'll also drop a ball in one of the greenside bunkers. And depending on their skill level, where they're at, if they're more advanced, then I'll make it a little more difficult. If it's an easier or a less advanced player, then I'll just have a standard bunker shot. But if it's more advanced, I might even, tap it in a little bit into the sand to make it a bit of a buried lie, because I want to see how they're going to handle that and how they're going to be able to formulate that in their mind. And obviously you have to be cognizant, depending on where you are, of other people on the course. You can't be taking a lot of time on a hole, but I want them to be able to experience it. Or I might even put it in a thicker, fluffier, rough lie, so that they don't have a perfect, a manicured fairway to hit from. I want them to be challenged a little bit, and see what happens when they hit that shot, because it's not going to, the ball is not going to react the same from the rough than it is from a fairway. And so I want to see how they handle that, right? And because what's the point? What's the point of just having them go around there hitting shots and keeping score if they're not presented with challenge? Because when you're not there, those challenges inevitably for all of us are going to come up. And if they haven't been prepared you have to practice those types of shots. And I guarantee it, a lot of them, unless you force them to do it, do not practice those shots on the practice tee unless they're in an instructional lesson, which Cindy brings to the next thing. And we've talked about this, I'm sure, numerous times before, but I think it's a very key issue. And that is the students' expectations of themselves. Are they realistic? Sometimes yes, but a lot of times no. What are your thoughts there?
I totally agree with you. and I think the more they understand that there will be challenges on the course and they will miss shots, we're trying to prepare them to recover from mistakes. That's my opinion. And to learn how to deal with the challenges. So knowing that you're not going to hit it perfect is a real big deal, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, no player, yourself included, I mean, as good of a player as you are, Cindy, you know yourself. You've faced many challenges out in the golf course, some not as difficult, but others very difficult. And you had to mentally, just like any other tour pro out there, have to prepare yourself to handle and then execute whatever shot you may be faced with. And if you're creating a perfect scenario every time for the student, then what are they really learning? They're learning, okay, great, I can hit it great from the fairway, and I can hit it, make those putts when I've got a close putt on a perfect lie in the green, and the pin's not in a difficult position. Well, yippee, that's fantastic. But what happens the 99% of the other time, when you get out there and now you've plugged it into a greenside bunker, or you've gotten into 2-inch rough, or you've even hit it out of bounds. What happens when you hit it out of bounds? There's a process there as well that has to go through. I want them to hit provisionals as well. I want them to get used to doing that in case we can't find their ball, or in case it has gone out of bounds and we have to make adjustments. So I want them to have a real course experience and not just create a perfect scenario. And that goes to what I was leading into this next question about the expectations of our students. Cindy, I know that some of your students that you've worked with for a long time, you've sort of molded them based on information they've given you as to what they want and the reasons why. Number one, of course, why they're there in the first place. But you've had a good handle of what their expectations are, and you've been able to help guide them into whether or not they're being realistic in their expectations, or whether or not they're shooting for the moon and haven't got a hope and of ever reaching it. So walk us through that process. What do you try to do with your students to help them, number one, stay grounded, but be realistic? How do you help them find what their expectations should be and what they can be, if that makes sense?
Well, I think we have to guide them and make them aware that, again, let's say a beginner says, I want to go out and play on the course. Well, that's great, but you might need to use a tee. Oh, well, you don't want me to use a tee on the course. I said, well, so again, it's the instructor knowing what the student needs at the time and the moment, and helping them become aware of their abilities or lack of abilities to make it easier to maneuver around the course. I mean, we're all trying to go out to play, and I think we're trying to help them think and, again, plan, prepare, and produce a shot in certain situations, and give them challenges, real-life challenges that they're going to face. I mean, we all know that golf is like the game of life,
Right.
And
that,
exactly. Things are going to happen. Don't think it's easy street your whole life. It's not. So the more you become aware of, there might be roadblocks and detours and dead ends, well, now what do I do? And that makes you tougher so that you're able to play better.
Yeah, and it comes with experience. I mean, none of us, regardless of how young we started in golf, we all had to learn as we went along, and it was through trial and error. And as we had, and this is what I guess I'm getting at, is my ultimate point is we have to create experiences for the golfer so that when they get into those situations in future, they can say, I remember this situation or a similar situation, and here's how I handled it. So that they've got that mental Rolodex, if you will, and the better tour players out there, or even the lower handicap players, have got a wealth of experience that they can draw from, just like in any aspect of life. When you go out and start a job, I don't care how much education you've got, until you actually get out there and start performing the job, you don't really have on-job experience. So it takes time, and as you develop that on-job experience, you start to develop skills and you find ways of doing it more efficiently and so on and so forth. And that's the same thing out in the golf course. And, you raised a very interesting point. My sister Nancy, and Nancy, if you're listening, I'm throwing you under the bus here. But she was one of these players for a very long time. When she first started playing, she started later in life, not early like me. And she would, in the golf course, she would tee it up. And I remember a couple times we were, playing with somebody that she was involved with at the time, and they said, "Well, wait a minute, no, you can't do that. That's on the, on the tee box. You can do that." And I said, "No. I said, she's not comfortable hitting it off even the fairway right now. So this is helping her build some confidence. And over time, we weaned her off the tee out in the middle of the fairway. But and she certainly didn't do that when she was in the rough because it sort of held, most cases it would sit up a little bit better for her. But that was just to help give her some confidence and help her feel good about going around the golf course and not making sort of that negative mindset build up. And that's something too that a lot of players develop, Cindy. And I know you've said this yourself, that there have been times when those negative demons have creeped in even in your game, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me? For sure.
Yeah, I knew you. Listen, I knew that was a given. You were going to say that.
Well,
but,
it's the truth.
Right.
I mean, you gotta speak the truth because again, then you don't trust, and you're not going to trust yourself. So you have to absolutely, definitely speak the truth.
Yeah, there's an expression I heard many years ago. You can either dazzle them with your brilliance or baffle them with your bullshit. And the problem is, unfortunately,
can I use that?
Yes, you certainly can. It's not copywritten as far as I know, so you're welcome to use that. But it's true. I mean, if you think about the analogy between the two, if you've created a skill set and you have, through your own experiences, figured out some ways that have worked for you, you can pass that knowledge on to your students. But believe you me, a savvy student, especially this day and age, because with the access of the internet, it's very difficult to BS your students. I mean, you can do it for a little bit of time, especially some of the newer ones, but after a while, they're going to catch on. And so, I prefer to try and dazzle them. I mean, maybe brilliance isn't the word I would use for myself, but, I try to dazzle them a little bit with what I do know, then try to baffle them with BS. Because, like you just said, you have to be able to speak the truth. And I think that a lot of golfers out there, especially our high handicap amateurs, if you're listening out here, you need to be realistic in your goals. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a long-term goal, whatever it may be. I'm not here to be a dreams killer or squash your dreams. But if your objective is to play one day on the LPGA or the PGA or even the Champions or Legends Tour, that's great. But you need to know what kind of a commitment you're going to need in order to reach that goal. And a lot of people just don't understand, Cindy, and you can attest to this yourself, how much hard work goes in that these tour players need to do week in, week out, how much of a commitment it is. Tell them just a little bit, just give them a little snippet of just how much of a commitment that is.
You live, eat, sleep, breathe, drink, golf.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's not like, and the funny thing is I have some kids who think they want to play college golf, and hitting balls once a week ain't going to cut it.
Right.
So it depends on the level. I mean, if you want to go play D3 or NAIA and shoot 100, that's fine. But you want to play D1 golf at a really good school, you got to start knowing that when you're in 6th and 7th and 8th grade. Otherwise, it's too late.
Right. I think that the other thing too is, as a teacher / coach, you have to look at the student's commitment level, just as you pointed out. If they want to play competitive golf, whether it be collegiate or in some junior program in preparation for something bigger, if they're not willing to put the time and effort in, as a college recruiter, you're going to look at that, and you're, like you just pointed out, if somebody's going out to the practice tee once a week, they're not really that interested in playing collegiate golf, despite what may be coming out of their mouth. And they're going to take a look at it. That's why they a lot of them will travel around and maybe take a look and watch individuals to see not just how well they're hitting the golf ball. Anybody with a decent swing can hit a pretty decent golf ball. but it's the level of commitment and how much they're willing to challenge themselves that a coach is really going to look for, because and also how good of a team player they're going to be. How do they handle difficult? There's a great thing right there. If the student's whipping clubs or smacking them up against a rock or a tree every time they hit a bad shot, I don't want them on my team, because
and did you see that video on what do you call it? Facebook? There was a basketball coach, and it was all about recruiting and body language. And a lot of coaches watch your body language, and they also watch how you treat your parents and your teammates.
Yes.
And if you are a little prima donna with, a lot of drama, you're not going to get chosen. So,
no.
And you know what? That goes on to bigger and better things, and as you grow older and how you deal in business. I mean, again, I wrote a Golf 101 for Executives book, and it talks about, are you selfish? Are you do you have a temper? How do you handle adversity? So that's all of that is shown when you play the game of golf.
Yeah, attitude is everything, and obviously there's maturity level. I mean, some people can mature a little faster, and again, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Let me ask you a question, and I think I might have posed this one before, but it's okay that somebody new is listening today, so we'll redo this question here. But Cindy, if you had only 5 minutes, let's say somebody's flown into Buffalo and they're playing in an event in a few days, and they've only got time for maybe we'll round it up to a 10-minute lesson, and they want some sort of improvement in their game, some kind of a tip that you can provide them or give to them to help them in that 5 to 10 minutes, that can maybe provide a long-term solution, not just a quick Band-Aid fix for their upcoming event. What would you do? What would you talk to them about in that?
I would say hit the ball, hit a couple of 9-irons.
Yeah.
And I would watch to see what they're doing. It might be a setup. It might be a swing thought. But that's probably all it's going to be. A setup change or a swing thought.
Yeah, I agree.
To make it really simple.
Yeah, I've posed this question before to my panel discussions on Thursday night and had some different answers, and mine sort of falls along the lines with you. I mean, first and foremost, I want to see the player hit. If they're hitting decent balls, then it may not be a physical part of their game. It could be a mental side. So that may be something you'd want to focus on there. Just give them some mental tips or cues that can help them navigate a little bit better. Ask them some questions. But if they're struggling and they're not hitting, if they can't hit 5 shots relatively decent and they're spraying them all over, then I know it could be, like you said, it could be a setup, it could be a grip. So I'm going to maybe go over very quickly the fundamentals with them. I'm going to check their grip and make sure that they've got a good sound grip. And obviously there can be variances. Some people have a stronger, some people have a weaker grip. Again, depending on their ball flight is going to tell me whether or not they've chosen the right one for their game. But I'm going to look at their setup. I'm going to see how they've lined up to their target and how they address the ball. Where's the ball position? You'd be surprised that sometimes just the ball position alone, if it's too far back or too far forward, can open up the shoulders too much to a point where they're now aiming well left of their target and producing that big old slice. Or conversely, they've got it so far back and they're kind of hunched and close, hovering over the ball. And that could create a whole myriad of shots. So I agree with you, Cindy. I think when you've only got a few minutes, you're not going to get into a whole bunch of swing changes or theories and things like that. You want to just take a look at what they're working with right now and help them address things a little bit more appropriately, so that when they get into that event, they're going to at least have something that they can continue to work on after. And if they're from the area, then I'm going to encourage them to come back for a full lesson, and we can diagnose things a little bit more in depth at that time. But I'm certainly not going to give them something that's going to monkey or screw up their round that's coming up in a few days, because they're definitely not going to want to come back. One final question, Cindy, I thought would be kind of interesting. Before we continue on, by that time I think Christina should be with us. If you had a student and you wanted them to master, now that's a relative term, master one club in the bag, what would it be and why? What club would you want them to really get good at using? Or I'm going to change it a little bit, not necessarily club, but is there a shot that maybe as well, that you would like them to have that go-to shot in times of trouble? Is there a club and a shot maybe that you can think of that you would like to get your students to master, and why?
I would say a half swing with any club.
Very good.
And why? Because it's called a fairway finder. And
Yep.
what do you need to do to just bunt it down the fairway? And that's what we need to work on. And if we can get to do that, no matter what happens when you start to freak out and you can't do what you're supposed to be doing, and you're having issues, we can definitely help. And that'll help
Right.
to know what you're doing.
Right, exactly. I'm going to pick an obvious club. That would be the putter. And the reason why is obviously we use our putter more than any other club really in the bag. I would want them to work on that, because the problem is most golfers, especially male golfers, let's be honest, are at the opposite end of the spectrum. They're hitting their driver all the time. They're not really focusing on what's going to happen when they get on the green, and they get faced with a 20 or 25-foot putt or even a 50-foot lag putt, and they don't know what to do. They've never, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, they've never experienced that enough. They haven't practiced it, and they just get up there willy-nilly and tap the thing. So I would want them to become very proficient, because even if they don't get to the green until 3 shots, if they can become very proficient with their putter, they're going to increase the number of opportunities of making that putt. Whereas if they don't practice much or they don't become proficient with their putter, you can get on the green in 2 and 3 putt or 4 putt.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's why. But I agree. I think a combination of what you said and what I said, I think would be great. I agree with the half swing as well.
Yeah, so if there were 2 things, I totally agree with you. Definitely, half swings and learn to putt, and you're going to lower your score by a mile.
Yeah, and Cindy, we've seen this many times before with a lot of golfers. They get out there. And they get on the practice tee. They don't practice with any sort of purpose. I agree with you. I would rather see a student that can maybe only hit 100 to 150 yards, but hit it straight and down the middle each and every time, than try to bomb, what they think they're going to get a 300-yard drive, which is just not going to happen for most amateurs. Very few amateurs can even come close to that, and it be all over the golf course. Because unless they've got a stellar short game that can recover, like Tiger Woods or some of these young up-and-comers on the LPGA Tour, or even some of the legends that have had phenomenal short games, they're just not going to score well. And they wonder why they're not breaking 100. So I would say I would do both what Cindy and I just suggested. I would get on that putting green, and I would spend a much greater time working on your putts. And then I would take every club in the bag, and I would work on half shots. Go through, with your wedges, and go through with your 9, 8, and 7, and even your 6 and 5 irons, and just take half shots, just to get the feel of connecting with the ball and getting that shot out straight down the fairway. Which brings me to another thing that we need to talk about real quick before we bring Christina on. And that is your Learn to Hit It kit, which does exactly what we just talked about. So go ahead.
It does, doesn't it? So
yes,
I created the Learn to Hit It kit, and what it is I haven't said this, but you can buy the course separately. The course just by itself is $49.99. So if you're looking just for the course, email me at cindy@cindymillergolf.com if you don't need the mat. So the Learn to Hit It kit comes with a portable mat, a foam Callaway golf balls that you can hit anywhere, the Golf 101 book, a coupon for 10% off any Callaway club, and a 10-module online course to teach you how to hit a clean, airborne, and straight on purpose. The whole kit itself is $99.99, and the course by itself is $49.99. So there's no more excuses. You can learn to hit it straight, clean, airborne, and straight on purpose anywhere.
Fantastic. And Cindy, I think that for 99, as you've mentioned so many times, for basically the cost on average of a golf lesson, they can get literally a plethora of information through this Learn to Hit It kit that you're providing. And, it's invaluable. And the great thing about it is they can use it over and over and over again. And it's compact enough that, if they're going maybe on a vacation somewhere and they're planning on playing golf, they can do a lot of this stuff in their hotel room. They can watch the information on the video portions of it. And because they've got some foam balls, if I'm not mistaken, or plastic balls, they can...
Foam.
Exactly. They can work on some of this stuff without having to worry about taking out a window or shattering a lamp or something like that. So there's no excuse. And, it goes to the point that we talked about earlier, Cindy, that if you're going to become better at this game, just like any other aspect in life, you have to be willing to invest some time. If you're just going to go out once in a blue moon and hit some balls or maybe play once a year, but have an expectation, as we touched on earlier, of being the next, Annika Sorenstam or, Rory McIlroy, it's not going to happen, So, anyways, that was my final thought there. All right, we've got a very special guest joining us now, Christina Ricci. She is an LPGA Class A teacher professional. She's TPI Golf Level 3 certified and also a best-selling golf author. Let me tell you just a little bit about her background, and then we'll bring her on the show, Cindy, and she can join us for some great conversation. Christina took up the game actually back in 2000 and quickly dropped from a 5 handicap to where she is now in literally just 5 short years. Her passion and commitment to the game shifted her career from her own marketing and branding company into the publishing world, where she launched her first book, A Girl's On-Course Survival Guide to Golf, and with 3 other additional books that have followed since then, all very, very good reads. She has helped grow and promote the game of golf to women in her very unique way since 2008, branding herself as one of the top promoters of women's golf. Christina has established a brand that communicates the game, which began with her own personal story. Her unique presentation of strong visuals, non-technical language, and a splash of humor keeps women engaged and getting more pars, which we're all about that. More than 100,000 women are enjoying more pars through her books, game improvement products, golf schools, and clinics. And her 4 books are sold at golf mass retailers across the country, including Dick's Sporting Goods, PGA Tour Superstores, Golf Galaxies, and many, many more. So, Cindy, without further hesitation, let's bring on our very special guest this morning, Christina Ricci.
Good morning.
Good morning. Congratulations on your Learn to Hit It kit. That sounds incredible.
Well, thanks. It was lots of fun to do. Congratulations on all your stuff. Tell us, how did you go from terrible to good in 5 years?
Well, first you got to move to a warm climate. So I lived in Florida, and I was able to play year-round. And at the time, I was working for myself. I had my own company, so I was able to go out on the golf course during the day and work at night. And I took lessons, a lot of lessons. When I started out, I was twice a week. And I would practice. That's the key. You got to practice. If you don't practice, then you're not going to improve.
You're preaching. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, Christina.
I know I am. How are you, Ted?
I'm doing very well, Christina. It's been a long time since we've communicated, but I'm glad to have you on the show. Let me ask you something. Let me just point out one very quick thing. I know that you have worked with Barry Goldstein, who's a good friend of mine. He's been a guest on my show, Golf Talk Live, many, many times down in South Florida. I know you've done some video work over the years as well with him. And you're familiar with his daughter, Carly Ray, of course, who now plays, I think in her final year at LSU. You've worked with a lot of different people, and you've had the pleasure of working with a lot of great women as well over the years. Just maybe touch on a little bit, because you brought it up about practice, how crucial it is that people get out there and practice, but practice more importantly with a purpose.
Well, I'll give you an example when I was learning the game. I don't know where this came from, and maybe you guys can help me, but when I was learning the game, I had that mentality that if I hit a bazillion balls, that I'll improve. And it's not the case. You need to, A, you got to play the game, and B, when you're learning something, you have to take your time and create a process. There is no such thing as muscle memory. Our muscles cannot hold the learning patterns. It comes from our brain. And people think if they bang a bazillion balls, they're going to get better. That's not the case. So we need to educate the students that the learning process, you're not agreeing with me, Cindy?
Totally agreeing with you.
All right, good.
Totally agreeing with you, darling.
Yeah, I love you. Okay, so yes. So we need to teach them a process and understand that, you know what, you don't have to go out for 2 hours and grab 4 buckets and hit them all. Instead, go out for a half an hour, make it really efficient. In fact, when I go out, I practice on the course now. I rarely go to the range unless I'm working on something very technical. And if I'm doing something technical, it's a half a bucket, maybe a bucket, and then I'm off doing golf, learning how to hit a shot, the process of hitting the shot, doing my routine each and every time so that when I go out to the golf course from the range, I'm transferring. That's the other thing. People don't know how to transfer. Oh, I was hitting it so great on the range, but then they go out on the course and they're like, what happened? That's because you're not teaching yourself a process. Golf is a process, and it's our job as educators to show them how.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. You know, and Christina, it raises a point that we talked about a little bit earlier on the first segment, you know, about, you know, on course, the value of on course instruction. You know, it's great if they get out there and they play a few holes, but if they're just playing them and as Cindy pointed out, keeping score, they're not really learning anything. And as one of the things I like to do is I like to create scenarios that they may be faced with so that they're learning from that experience, so that the next time they get faced with that challenge, they're going to have a better understanding of being able to transfer that knowledge into that particular you know, time on the range. And again, it goes back to practicing with a purpose, and then, as you said, transferring it. What do you try to do to challenge your students during some of the lessons? What do you do when you get them out on a golf course? How do you challenge them?
I always ask them, what do you want to do here? What do you want to do? And some of them like, I don't know. I just want to hit the ball. Well, you have to have a plan. You know, where's your landing spot? That's the number one thing I see. They struggle with a landing spot and focusing on that landing spot, whether it's on the tee, whether you're off the green and chipping onto the green, you need to have a landing spot. And it keeps you focused on the target. You know, we're so focused on hitting the ball that we forget about the target, and that's the most important part. So if we put all our energies toward the target, we're going to have much more success. And that's what we got to teach, and that's what I teach when I'm out on the course.
Right. Cindy, let me ask you, I want to ask a question, obviously, to both, but Cindy, I want you to chime in and correct me if I'm wrong. I think the difference between our amateurs and our tour players, as an example, is this. When a tour player steps up on a tee, they're, as Christina just pointed out, they're looking at their target. They're not focusing on the trouble over here on the left side of the fairway or the right side of the fairway or that stream that's crossing over the middle. They're looking and they're focusing on their target area, as Christina just pointed out. The amateur is in reverse. They're not focusing on the target area. They're focusing on all the trouble. So they're looking at the whole picture instead of just where they want the ball to land on that shot. Is that pretty accurate, do you think?
Well, I think it depends on the amateur, but yeah, and I think you can teach that to people. We have a program we do, and we have a picture of a green that's kind of like the 17th at TPC, and there's water surrounding it, and there's a bunker, and, you know, we put the slide up on the screen and say, okay, what do you see? And it's funny because Alan and I see the fat part of the green, you know, and most of the amateurs see the water, like, oh, boy, here we go.
Right.
So they focus on where they don't want it to go. So I think that comes from, and I'm going to argue with Christina just a little bit, because if I think about the target myself, I don't produce the shot personally. So I think about where I want the ball to go, and I visualize the shot I want to hit. And then when I get up to swing, I let my right brain feel what I want to do with the club. If I think about the target when I'm over the ball and trying to put it close to the hole, I can't swing and I lock up. I would love not to do that, but I can't help it. That's just because I'm a control freak maniac. But I have to focus on the task at hand myself.
That's interesting.
And then it goes, I absolutely can't think target. But I agree that people see the trouble because they don't believe they know how to play the shot. And that's why, when Christina says, what are you going to do here? What's your plan? And they go, oh, because they don't know. And that's where we really have to help them and guide them.
Right. Well said. What about a player like that, Christina? A player like Cindy. Obviously, she's got tremendous talent in that, and has found a way that works for her. But obviously, there are other players out there and other amateurs, particularly, that maybe fall into that same scenario. Do you work with what they have, or do you try to make changes? What would your strategy be if you had one to get them to do more focusing on the target, or do you leave it alone and do as Cindy has done?
If I see that a player is really struggling with that, I will work with the player. There's no cookie cutter here. I work with the individual student. What is their needs? Do they prefer, how do they like to learn? And then I focus on that. It's all about them. It's not about me and my philosophy. I want them to get more pars, and I'm going to do that in any way I can. So if one way doesn't work, I'm going to try another way. That way doesn't work, I'm going to try another way until they get it. I'll never forget a student at a golf school said to me, as a group, they said, what we really loved about your school is you never gave up on us. If we didn't get it, you kept going, and you kept going until we got it. And they said, we really appreciated that. Because, that's teaching. If someone doesn't understand something, the way you're communicating it, you got to communicate it a different way because everyone learns differently. That's just the way it is in life, with any learning. So it's patience for us as teachers, and it's patience for the students to learn.
Right. I think, and this goes to a question that Cindy and I were discussing a little bit earlier too, is about the expectations of students. I think sometimes their expectations, as well-founded as they might be, are not always realistic. Little Johnny wants to, or little Sally wants to, be the next LPGA star or PGA star, but they only want to show up on the practice tee once a week. You don't want to, as I put earlier, you don't want to squash dreams, but at the same time, you need to put things in perspective. So Christina, do you have sort of an initial assessment when working with new students as to find out why they're there in the first place, and then sort of build your lesson plans around that?
That's an excellent question. And I'm a big fan of goals. So yes, actually this year I'm implementing a sit-down. The first session is going to all be about goals. Everyone's going to get a sheet that they're going to take home. We're all going to sit in a circle, and we're going to share our goals. Because if we don't have goals, then we're not going to achieve. Goals keep us focused and on track. So, yes, goals are going to be a big part of my clinics this season. Big.
What about from a standpoint, though, of finding out from the students up front what their reasoning for being there? Not just, obviously their goals are extremely important, but, some players, they don't care. They don't want to be the next great player. They just want to go out there and have fun, but they want to be able to do it. You had talked about here in one of the notes that we had about, attending clinics or lessons, that some can be a little bit fearful of doing that because they maybe don't want to look bad, or, they think that it's going to derail their game that they currently have. How do you overcome that? How do you, assure them that they need to have this, be given this information in order to be able to move forward and sort of retrain their brain, if you will, into thinking positively, but also producing better golf shots, as opposed to just in that repetitive pattern of doing the same mistakes again and again, which we know is often said that when you do the same thing, get the same result, and it's bad, that's sort of the definition of insanity. So what do you do to sort of help your students, retrain themselves? What are some steps that you try to take with them?
Well, we have a conversation. Once I understand what their goals are, Christina, what? I don't want to be the next Tonic. I don't want to be single digits. I just want to get the ball airborne. I want to have fun. I want to play in that league without embarrassing myself. Okay. So I will focus on, and I will share with them, what do you think of this game plan? Why don't we focus on your setups, making sure that you have a process with each shot, and get you out there. You know, a lot of mistakes happen before they even take the club back. So if we just focus on setup, we focus on target, and we keep it real simple for those players. One thing, maybe two, tied into the routine. But if you overload them, they're out. They're going to check out. So I keep it real simple, but I have a conversation. It's all about the conversation, getting to know what that student wants, and then create a game plan around that.
Cindy, and well said. Cindy, you've said that many times yourself, that really the understanding the whys and engaging your students in conversation, even before you start the instructions, just to get an idea of where they're at, what their future goals are, and just opening that dialogue. Maybe explain a little bit again, just for the listeners as well, adding to what Christina just said, the importance of that.
I think the bad thing about golf is it's a patient sport, and the good thing about golf is it's a participation sport. What I mean by that is that, how many women are hitting balls on the driving range? 2 or 3 women go out to hit balls after work. No teacher. Some guy walks up and says, you're bending your left elbow. And it's like, you know what? I didn't ask your opinion. So I call those people the committee, the committee of they. And the committee always wants to share their opinion. And then I think that gives people an expectation of, well, I should do this. And then they come in for a lesson and they go, oh, my God, I just want to hit it airborne down the middle of the fairway each time. But they're trying to hit the ball, and they don't know how to swing. And they're not paying attention to what Christina says is their process, or you say your process. And so you've got to know what you're doing here now, the task at hand, not the future of where the ball's going. So they don't pay attention to what they're doing. They're looking for something future. So we have to sit them down, which, I do as well. I'm like, okay, let's discuss this. And we almost have to share with them how they're thinking too far ahead rather than, let's back this up. What makes the face be straight? Your face is not even square at a dress, so how are we going to hit it straight? So we have to make them aware without browbeating them, if you will, and just say, let me just share this with you. Let me show you. And then they go, oh, I didn't know that, because of the committee. You're looking up. Well, you're looking up because you're keeping your arms straight, and your arm's pulling you out of position. So, again, but they don't know that because they think they got to keep their arms straight and their head down. So we just have to share our wisdom with them and help them.
That's right.
Yeah,
well said, Cindy.
Yeah, I just want to add something real quick, just a very quick, very little story, and then we'll get right back to it. I remember being at a range a couple of years ago, and there was a young lady that came up, and she had just set her clubs down. She hadn't even hit a golf shot, and a gentleman walked up, and right away he was going into the lesson. I think he was probably flirting with her, but he was trying to teach her. She hadn't even hit a golf shot yet, and he was already trying to give her advice on what she needed to do. And funny enough, it turned out she was actually the daughter of the club pro and had been playing since she was knee-high to a grasshopper, and could actually hit the ball better than he could. But it was just hilarious how he like you said, the committee of they, Cindy. Christy, I want to give you an opportunity here in the last little bit of the segment here to talk about your books. You've got several of them now, but talk about why particularly your first book resonated so well with many out there. Why did it just sort of hit home with a lot of people?
I think a lot of it was the personal story. I started later in life. I didn't start when I was 2. I wish I had, but I didn't. And I was able to become a pretty good player in a short amount of time. And regardless of whether or not a player wants to, it just gives them motivation. And I think the packaging of the book, the portability of it, the pink, believe it or not, is approachable and fun. I got a lot of slack on the title, using the word girls, but I did it because it made the book more approachable. And then the content itself. You know, women really like the yes, no, the do, don't, step 1, 2, 3. It's all visual, cover to cover, key to green. Every page is visual. It's photographs, and then you can it lays flat when you're at the course. So it's functional. It's functional. And I think that's what resonates. And they get results.
Yeah, it's definitely a great book, and you know, I like it because it is. I've seen it. I don't have one, but I've seen some snippets in that online over the years, and it is a very well put together book. And great job, by the way. And I know you followed up with some other books. Tell us the follow up books. What are they about? And then I'm going to let you share with the audience, for those that don't have a copy, where they can go to get a copy of your books.
Thank you. The yellow book, which I call like the sister book to the pink, is the next step. So it dives deeper. You know, I would say it's more for the more experienced player. The green book is marketed to men and women. That actually came out before the yellow book. And that dives into a lot of course management. It has 3 amazing pros, guy pros. Barry's one of them, Kevin Sprecher, and Mark Spencer. So that one is a lot of course management. It has a great mental quiz section in the beginning. You know, it's to help you take your game to the next level on a more strategy course management. And it also has, you know, the tough shots and all that, just like the other books. And then the 4th one is an actual journal. It's a really cool golf journal. So it's for those players that really want to track their stats. They can track basic, advanced. They can log notes, their lessons, practice, goals. That's the journal. And they can get all those at, you know, the PGA Tour superstores, the mass retailers, or they can go online to golfsurvivalguide.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Very good.
Great
Very
job.
good. What's next for
Thank
Christina?
What's next is grow the game. I just signed on as a ambassador for Fit America. I believe there's a huge gap of game awareness in this world to non-golfers, and I think presenting the game as fun, this game is awesome, you are missing out if you are not playing, and it's healthy. I think with the right messaging, we can get non-golfers into this game. I mean, this is fun for the whole family, and you can get exercise. Join us. So I'm going to work on creating a campaign message that goes after that and really attracts the non-golfers. You know, the 37 million that are thinking about getting into the game. They're out there. We need to get them. So that's what's next.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, we've all try to find ways. You know, last week Cindy and I had 2 individuals on from Chris Hart and I think it was Leah Schwartz from Next Gen Golf, which is short for Next Generation, and they're, you know, doing their efforts as well to grow the game and trying to go after the millennials particularly. That has been, for some, a tough nut to crack, if you will, for a lot of professionals out there, because there are so many other distractions in life, and not everybody has 4 hours or more to commit to playing a round of golf. So, you know, obviously there's been other things invented, if you will, to try and shorten that and you know, other ways of getting people involved in golf. But I think the first and foremost, and Christine, you touched on this very early on in the conversation, about not overwhelming students. And I think that with all of the technology and all of the, you know, the wonderful things that have come into the golf industry, I think there has been one of the dangers has been that maybe some students have become a little bit overwhelmed with that technology and overwhelmed with the instruction. So we need to simplify things, I think, a little bit more, but I think we need to get that message out there first and foremost that golf can be fun. It's a fun game. It's challenging, of course, but it's fun. And I think the family is, in my opinion, should be the number one target, not individuals, but the family. Get the family involved as a a nucleus, if you will, of golf. And I think that, if mom comes out to play, or the kids want to come out and play, mom's going to follow. And, if the family goes on vacation, there's many opportunities that they can play golf as a family, even if it's just, a 9-hole executive course somewhere, if they're not ready to get out there on the big links. But great work, Christina. I've watched you over the years, and I know that you've worked with Barry, and he's a great guy and brings a lot to the game as well. But we appreciate you coming on. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate it. Keep doing the great work, and feel free to come back anytime. We'd love to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a great day. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was our very special guest, Christina Ricci. Great young lady. As I said, I've not had the pleasure of meeting her personally, but I've followed her over the years and know of a lot of the great work that she's been doing, and just has a lot of, a great inspirational story. There's proof right there that somebody that started playing this game much later than some in life, but yet rose to the challenge to go out there, Cindy, and just give it her all and work and commit. And here she is. She's teaching golf now. She's not just playing. She's teaching and written 4 great books to help others out there.
Absolutely. It just goes to show that if you really commit and fall in love with the process and the challenge, which she did, and she's really helping a lot of people learn to play and enjoy the game.
Exactly. And, we're all doing that in our own way. And I think collectively as a group, I think we're moving that needle further and further down, but still lots more great work to do. And we're going to keep doing that here every Tuesday morning here on the Women of Golf Show. But we've got just a moment or two left, Cindy. I'm going to give you another opportunity here to just go ahead and plug the Learn to Hit It kit. Do that one more time in case those that tune in a bit late and missed it the first time. Go ahead.
Well, again, for those of you who need to learn to hit it clean, airborne, and straight on purpose, the Learn to Hit It kit might be the thing for you. It comes with a portable mat, foam golf balls that you can hit inside your house, my Golf 101 book, a coupon for 10% off any Callaway club, and best of all, a 10-module online course that visually teaches you how to hit it clean, airborne, and straight on purpose. If you're interested in purchasing it, you go to learntohititkit.com, and it's $99.99. If you only want the course, you can purchase that for $49.99. And you can find me at cindy@cindymillergolf.com, or you can purchase the kit at learntohititkit.com.
Well said. Great way to end the show. Just remember, folks, that we're here every Tuesday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern on blogtalkradio.com network. Best way to find us, go to that network, type in Women of Golf, or go to iTunes.com, and under the podcast section, again, type in Women of Golf, and you can listen to us live every Tuesday here on the Women of Golf Show from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Next week, we'll be back with another great guest, and we will continue to help you with your game. And go to learntohititkit.com and get yourself a copy of really what I consider to be a great product. Cindy is one of the premier golf instructors in the United States, in my opinion. I'm not just saying that because she's a great person as well, but she is literally a workhorse in this industry and does so many great things, and is just a great ambassador, in my opinion, of golf in general. So thank you, Cindy, for all you do. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the Women of Golf Show this morning. We appreciate your time, and we hope you'll come back and join us. And feel free to reach out and communicate with us however you want to. But 2 great ways is Cindy@cindymillergolf.com, or my email is ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Until then, God bless everybody. Have a great week. And Cindy, as always, thank you for all that you do. And we'll see you right here next week on the Women of Golf. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
You too.